Kevin Donahue. Welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on. How are you?
It's great to be on. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And what a great morning to be with the two of you. So thanks for the time.
Great. Yeah, great meeting you. Thank you for your time too. So you were talking about you're from Florida, right?
Yeah, I'm living in Naples, Florida, and with my wife and son. We've been here about a year. We've been in Florida for, I don't know, maybe 15, 16 years. So we're just now adjusting to the heat.
So in Arizona we have like the dry heat. I've been to Florida.
No such thing. That's what they call an oven, right?
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! I can't deal with the humidity. I can deal with the heat. I just can't deal with the humidity.
I'm right there with you. I mean, there are good days and bad days, going half mad days. So,
but you have like the beach right there.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah. Our, I'll send you guys a great sunset tonight. So, but we get to go to the beach. We get the sea breeze, as they say. But yeah, I mean, we love being here in Florida. Love traveling.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's amazing. Gustavo and I did an episode on the Camino for St. James feast day not that long ago.
Yeah, I listened to it. It was great.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I mean, it's for two guys that haven't done the Camino. We sure could talk about it. But now we're like, let's talk to someone who has actually done the Camino in other pilgrimages. So that's how we stumbled upon your podcast and your YouTube channel. So you are a pilgrim. Can we call you like a professional pilgrim?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, guys, I think I thought of myself when I first started walking pilgrimages as kind of a reluctant pilgrim because when we think about pilgrimage, right, it's sort of this storied thing through history. And we hear about, people of all faiths and making these sort of epic trips, to Christian shrines or Muslim shrines or Buddhist shrines and giving all of themselves to the journey. And I thought to myself, gosh, I don't really measure up to that. Right. That doesn't look and feel like what I'm doing, because I started thinking of the Camino de Santiago as kind of a bucket list, right? Like I wanted to have a cultural experience. I wanted to intersect my life with the history of, all the pilgrims who had walked before, kind of walk in their footsteps. And so I was really a reluctant pilgrim, I think, to start. So I don't know if I would be a professional pilgrim now. I mean, like you say, I've walked in a few places. I've done the Camino de Santiago. In the United States, I've been walking the California mission trails up through California from San Diego towards San Francisco, the 21 original Spanish missions through California. I've been over in the UK. I walked from London to Canterbury on what's called the Pilgrim's Way, originally to the shrine of St. Thomas Becket, and then from Canterbury to Dover. And then the Way of St. Cuthbert, which is such an incredible pilgrimage walk through Scotland and Northumbria to Holy Island, where if we got time, I'll tell you about it. You actually walk across the receding tides of the North Sea to St. Augustine's Abbey on the Holy Island of Lindisfarne. It's a great pilgrimage.
Is that where the ruins are?
Yes, absolutely.
Where Henry VIII destroyed that monastery.
So many of the English shrines and, the things that man builds, to honor the relics of saints, were destroyed in 1538 by Henry VIII in the English Reformation. And so, we think about pilgrimage, and my background, my family, get out the old, 23andMe and Ancestry.com and all of those, right? Yes. And my family is kind of Irish and English and Scottish. And like, I'm a mutt. I've got like a bunch of stuff thrown in here, right? So, but, when we think about the faith practices of like the English versus the Irish, where we've got a lot of Catholic Irish and a lot of Protestant Anglican English, really stemming from the English Reformation, because up to that point, the largest Christian denominations were all Catholic. in England. And
Yeah.
the entire practice of pilgrimage went away during the English Reformation because it was illegal to venerate the saints. Yeah, it was illegal to, celebrate the relics of those who God had touched their lives, most directly on earth. And that whole practice became something that eliminated pilgrimage in the UK. So it's just coming back, which is great. And then this summer,
That's awesome.
I most recently walked through Italy. I walked to St. Peter's Basilica, and that was a really cool pilgrimage because on that trip I actually carried the prayers that people had written me. I had about 70 people who had written to me saying, please pray on my behalf. So I carried their prayers and prayed for them nightly along my own pilgrimage to St. Peter's Basilica to Rome. So I don't know. Maybe I'm starting to be an amateur pilgrim, but it's something I'm really enjoyed because you meet so many people along the way. You go to places that kind of inspire questions for you and maybe enlighten a few answers. And there's such this brotherhood of people who are, either seeking an experience, seeking insights, seeking to learn something about themselves. And it's more than a hobby.
It's really fascinating, honestly. There's so many things that you were talking. It's like, just one question. Let's begin with which was the first pilgrimage that you did, and why did you decide to do a pilgrimage in the first place?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Walter, I did the Camino de Santiago, which is the way of St. James that you talked about in the last episodes, which go down and listen to that episode. It's a fantastic exploration from the St. James feast day. You guys just did a fantastic job with it. But I thought the Camino de Santiago is such an accessible pilgrimage. You don't have to know a lot. You don't have to be a backpacker. You don't have to be a hiker. You don't have to, you really don't even have to know where you're going along the way or how you're going to get there. Because for more than 1,000 years, the Spanish people, the Portuguese, the French people have all taken in walkers who are making their way to the shrine of Santiago, James the Greater, in Santiago de Compostela. So, the way of St. James is really like a spider web. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of different ways that people might walk that route, because you would just start from your house if you lived in Europe and you would just walk towards Santiago de Compostela. So I did the Camino Português. I started in Porto, Portugal, really because I was really fascinated by the St. James story, right? And there's so much that we get from the New Testament. And then there is so much that is derived from the Bible stories, right? So we know that James and all of the apostles went out to tell the story of Jesus. And it's said that James himself went to Spain and tried very hard to convince the Celtic people there that, to follow the way of Jesus. And by all accounts, he was not terribly successful, but passionate about being there. James returned to Jerusalem and became a martyr, was killed by the sword. And the stories are many and they're varied, and you have to, I think, exercise some discretion as to which ones you might choose to believe. But the body of St. James returned to Spain, and is widely believed. Yeah, widely believed that it made its way to Padrón in Spain and Galicia. And I wanted to walk a route that went through Padrón. So the Camino Português goes through Padrón, where the tomb of St. James was found and then taken to Santiago. So Santiago de Compostela, and I think you kind of got into this a little bit, but when his tomb was discovered, right, the gentleman followed the stars to find it through the field. So Santiago de Compostela, Santiago is St. James, Saint Iago de Compostela in the field of stars. So Santiago de Compostela, the cathedral there now, is home to the relics of St. James. So I wanted to be there. It was so easy to walk because, you follow the yellow arrows, right? You don't need a map. You don't need a compass. You don't need a GPS. You don't even need an app. You just walk, and there are yellow arrows that lead you almost every road that you could conceivably go. Every path and trail you could conceivably walk has these yellow arrows. So you follow them to Santiago de Compostela. When you're tired, there's a lot of infrastructure on this pilgrimage route. So there are albergues and pensions and municipal hostels that will take people in for the night, and very inexpensive. There are restaurants along the way that give you the pilgrim's menu, that's maybe €5 or €6. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can stay in very nice hotels. You can eat at very nice restaurants, but the infrastructure is such that almost anyone could walk the Camino. And for me, that made it very appealing to do as my very first pilgrimage.
Well, that sounds like, you don't have to carry your tent. You don't have to carry
no tent.
bag.
Yeah. No sleeping bag.
You don't have to
no
carry
cook
food.
kit. Yeah.
Cook kit. You can have a really nice coffee if you want to. Stop at a cafe. So it seems like pretty accessible.
Listen, the best part for me was I would stop in the cafes every morning and I would get a bacon bocadilla, which is like a back bacon sandwich. Yeah, with and like some crusty bread, and I'd get my.
That sounds pretty good about now.
That's what I'm saying. Like so my first Camino was filled with these bacon bocadillos and dreams of finding more bacon bocadillos along the
that's
along
what kept
the way.
you going. That's so funny. There's this thing bocadillo de tortilla patata, which is basically like a potato omelet in between two pieces of bread. I'm like, oh my goodness, and they think Americans are carb obsessive. You guys beat us to the punch on that one.
Well, you're walking though, right? You're burning it all off.
So.
You need that.
Don't walk the Camino.
No, you've got it. You got to get that. But if you're a coffee con leche, whatever you might be, and the people in Spain are so gracious to the pilgrims. It doesn't matter your background. I met people from South Korea, Australia, South Africa, Europe, all over North America, Brazil, Latin America. You don't need to speak Spanish. They will pour out their heart and soul to make sure you have anything you need. So just a wonderful pilgrimage. And in the end, my family met me at the Cathedral de Santiago de Compostela, and it was just a wonderful welcoming.
So
go ahead.
Pardon the pun, but walk us through how it went from the first pilgrimage to this is the thing that I do now.
Yeah, Gustavo. So there are a couple things that happen on pilgrimage that I think invite or almost call people, if you will, to do future pilgrimages. One is, let's be honest, in our day-to-day lives, we very rarely make time to be introspective. We very rarely make time to have new experiences or to ask more of ourselves than we would just, going to our jobs or going home to the store or being home with our families. And so being able to make this long walk, my job was gracious enough to allow me the time off, to be with people from other cultures and other places, really talking and laughing and crying and sweating and, going through the whole experience of being, on a hot summer day, walking these trails. And then, I arrived to Santiago de Compostela. I was mentally exhausted just from all that I had encountered. I was physically broken from the experience because no one told me in Portugal they have cobblestones, which they're like, you walk on them and then all of a sudden they're like hobblestones. I kind of beat my feet up a bit. And I was spiritually laid out because, I was at a point in my faith journey where I was maybe lapsed, but listening, to borrow Egan's expression. And I said, I really found myself along the way. And all of those things combined were so personally spiritually, mentally enriching that the minute I finished, we left Spain and we took a couple days holiday over in Ireland, and I found myself grabbing the laptop at some point and like starting to Google like Irish pilgrimage. Where would I want to go next? And I think it's really a combination of all of the above, but being with people who are going through different phases of their lives, and you kind of make, I don't know, I call it like a tribe or a pilgrim family. You meet people along the way who touch your life, right? And when you have experiences that are enriching like that, whether it's you followed your hobby and you went sailing, and the next thing you want to do when you get home is pack up and go sailing. It was a bit like that for me with pilgrimage as well. So, and I'm a storyteller at heart, and there were so many people I met along the way who were willing to pour out their heart to me. And then we got hit with the pandemic, right? And we were all locked down, and I was just missing it. And so that's really the reason I started writing a book about it. That's really the reason I started, doing a podcast, because I missed my tribe. Those pilgrims who were seeking.
Yeah, that excuse me. That I think our one of the conversations that I had with our former pastor in our parish here in Phoenix did the Camino twice. Yeah. And he was sharing some similar experience that at the end he's like, okay, Lord, what do you want me to do? And he got his answer from that to that prayer in
wonderful.
Several different ways. But
because not everybody does, right? Like
yes,
we don't know what we are called to do, or what we're called to experience, or what we're called to contribute. And we think we're on this path, right? Physically, proverbially, literally, and maybe it's not, right? Maybe we're supposed to be, we think we're venerating the saints, or we're enriching our spiritual life, and maybe it's just that we're supposed to meet this one person along the way. It's a lot of people pour a lot into pilgrimage, and to be honest with you, a lot of these places there's sort of this dual audience, maybe, of people who are walking for their health. They're walking for adventure. They're walking for tourism. They're walking, to just have a new experience, like I thought I would be. And then there are people who are, doing it as a celebration of their faith. And I think you asked me about pilgrims. I think, when we think about pilgrimage is like an expression of faith, right? And I think if you're faithful about it, and you're investing, like this is a faithful practice that you intend to do, then it's really about the journey much more so than the destination. Yeah. And I think maybe that's one of the things that separates like pilgrims at heart, is that they are focused on the next step, the next moment, the next day, versus the next city, the next cathedral, the next destination.
Yeah. I definitely had experiences like that. Like when I went to Carmel in Monterey Bay, which, is it the last mission in the north, or is still one northern than that?
There's one just a little further north, but that's going to the California missions, whether you're walking or driving, or you're going, if you're in elementary school, many of the schools, especially the parish schools, will go to the missions. And I think that's a great example of how people can go to some of these places that we celebrate, and many that we venerate, in order to experience what it's like a little bit to be there. I was walking, I don't want to step on your story here, so excuse me.
No, I mean, it's a good segue, but when I saw that you have done the California Missions Trail, my wife is from Northern California, and my mother-in-law lives in Salinas, which is like close by to Monterey. So we go to Monterey, to Carmel, and we went to daily mass, and the priest is like, "Who would like to read the readings for the day?" And I was like, "Pick me,
Hand
pick
up.
me." So I got to
Walter's in.
my claim to fame is that I got to read the readings for the daily mass when we went to Carmel. It's like, when do you get to do that kind of stuff when you are, you know, in front of like the tomb of Saint Junipero Serra.
Yeah.
And then
That's
I think
just incredible.
In San Diego, we also went to like the San Diego Mission, which is
Mm-hmm.
another beautiful church. But those are the only two that we have been to. And after that, my wife and I were like, let's just go to all of them. But we have 4 small children, and walking from San Diego to San Francisco seems like a little bit of a challenge. Represents so. Can you talk
for you guys, not for the kids, right? The kids would be like,
yeah, they would
hurry
be
up,
like,
Dad.
They're killing it.
Hurry up, Daddy. Come on.
Take 6 months to finish.
You're weighing us down, Dad. Come on, hurry up.
Why don't you walk faster? I have all the equipment. I'm a pack mule, basically. Can
Walter
you talk
the
about,
Sherpa?
I know. I like that. Can you talk a little bit about like, is there as much infrastructure or something similar to like the California Missions Trail for someone that wants to do it on foot? Because I know that like the Pacific Trail crest, or like the Appalachian Trail, those are like true hikes that people do with everything on their backs, right? But you don't hear that so much about like the California Missions. So is there, what was your experience with that?
Yeah, so I've actually hiked a portion of the Appalachian Trail and the Florida National Scenic Trail, and so I started as a backpacker, right, as a hiker,
Nice.
Long before I was walking these pilgrimages. And the pilgrimage backpack is way lighter, as you said. I don't have to. I take a 32-liter backpack, which is about the size somebody would take if they were throwing their laptop in for work, and that's like how I walk for a couple weeks. Yeah. So the California Mission Trail, to answer your question first, does not have the type of infrastructure that you would find on the Camino de Santiago. There is a fantastic group on Facebook, the California Mission Walkers, and there's a new 501c3 California Mission Trail that is working to signpost and kind of help people find the California Mission Trail. So in some ways, it's, I think it's like a graduate level walk, because you are responsible for your own navigation. And, you're walking through some of the biggest metro areas in the United States. You're going through San Diego and Los Angeles and places where, you're using the crosswalk. So that's a little different than necessarily, I'm waiting on the red light. So it's not necessarily, the Camino de Santiago, or walking through, the champagne fields in France on the Via Francigena. But it's incredibly rewarding. I mean, I started in San Diego at the Mission San Diego Acala, as you visited, made my way up through Torrey Pines, and you're walking along the ocean, and it's breathtaking. Now, it's pretty unusual to have backpackers or walkers out in that area. So most people are there to surf or to, go to the beach, or they're just living their daily lives as you make your way. You're walking into a cafe and there's, 9 people just waiting for a venti. So it is like this contrast between your purpose and the secular world. And that can be, that's a bit of a challenge as well, because you want to create this space, or at least I do, where you can be more reflective. And when you're surrounded by what would be your normal day to day, people on their iPads, people waiting for the bus, people honking horns, whatever it might be, it can be a challenge for you to, to manage your headspace a little bit. But I'll tell you, I had a really just incredible moment on my way as I was walking the missions. And there were this is during COVID, and we were all, especially, every state had its own thing. Florida, I think Not sure COVID ever existed in Florida. They just outlawed it. I'm not sure. We outlaw things here. But in California, it was very, very tight for the lockdowns. So you had this was in 2021, a year or so into the pandemic. And so things were opening up a little bit. You could do certain things. And so I was making my way up to the mission, and I was there, and there was a family, 2 little girls, and they were working on their 4th grade project to write about the missions. And I was carrying my backpack, and I had my shell on my backpack, which is kind of like a symbol of the pilgrimage. Right. And my backpack's got some patches and stickers and pins and stuff that I kind of collected along the way. And the little girl kind of walked up to me, and I'd set my pack down, and I was kind of taking some pictures. And she said, "Are you a pilgrim?" And same thing I said to you, like, I don't know. Like, maybe. She's like, I really want to be a pilgrim. And that's why we came here. And I said, I think that's why I came here too. And so we talked to the girls a little bit and talked to their mom, and we took some pictures, and I showed them some pictures on my phone of different places I had been. And I had a lot of times I'll take a shell and I'll write something I'm thinking about on it, and I'll just sort of give it back. Right. I took a few shells, and I had planned to be by the ocean and sort of write out my reflections or something on a scallop shell and kind of send it off to the ocean. So I had a couple of shells in my bag, and I like wrote out their names and like Pilgrim on it, and I gave it to them. And we got, at every mission, as you're going to the California missions, they have a mission passport, which is kind of like the Pilgrim passport that you would carry to Compostela. Right. And so we got them a Pilgrim passport. We went into the gift shop. They sell them there. And I got them some Pilgrim passports, and we got them stamped. All 3 of us got them stamped together. So I said, okay, we're all 3 pilgrims now. And I talk about the girls in my first book. And, it's moments like that where you kind of ask yourself, like, what am I doing here? But also, like, what are we all doing here? And, when those things collide a little bit, I feel like I get to learn as much from the people I interact with and anything I see or pass or visit along the way.
Yeah, there's no coincidences.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Like, in the middle of lockdowns and stuff, this little girl wants to be a pilgrim. That's awesome.
Yeah. I think that the sense of adventure that comes with it is also like kind of like a thrill from it. Like my oldest boy is 6, and we are going to start doing Troops of St. George. So he's really excited about like camping equipment and sleeping bags, and he wants to sleep in his sleeping bag in his bed. And it's really endearing to me to see him excited about that. I was in the Boy Scouts growing up, so I know that getting out into nature is like good for a kid to experience that. So the fact that you have a 4th grader saying, "I want to be a pilgrim," it's like, all right.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you just don't hear a lot about it, right? Because pilgrimage is such a, it's such a thing in our culture where it seems far away, it seems distant. And I think in popular culture, it's maybe having a little bit of a renaissance. But people have been walking pilgrimage for thousands of years, whether it's to Mecca or Jerusalem or Rome, or the Buddhist among the 88 temples in Japan or over in India. I think people have been seeking something that expresses their faith in a lot of different ways. And, now people of all faiths and none can do that. People who are spiritual, but, perhaps not religious, right? Which is a really interesting combination that you guys had talked about sometimes. But, it's like, where is that space? But I think all of us seek something greater than ourselves, and all of us seek reflection. All of us seek that opportunity. And I think what I would loosely call pilgrimage is just that headspace to do it. It's permission to do it, right? And some of us, like me, like in order to give myself that permission, I kind of have to go. I have to walk. I don't necessarily want to suffer through it, right? I want to have comfortable shoes. I want to have a light backpack. I want to try to find a bed at night. But for me, the journey is very much like the thing with the opportunity I'm seeking.
Yeah.
Nice.
I was recently in New Mexico, and we talked about this in that episode that you mentioned. And the contrary of that, you see people walking from Santa Fe to Chimayo with crosses on their back, or like some people like do the last mile like on their knees and things like this. And it's like you said, it's
in Mexico City and the Basilica de Guadalupe, they go on their knees from like the threshold.
Or in Portugal, you walk all the stairs on your knees. I mean, so the things that people do as an expression of faith are varied. Yes. And I think that's good, right? So and on the Camino, I think one of the things that is challenging for all of us is not to try to impart our own practice on others.
Yeah, it's a very personal journey.
Basically. Yeah, and what if there's someone who there's a great movie that a lot of people watch especially in the United States called The Way with Martin Sheen, produced by and directed by Emilio Estevez, and it's about the Camino de Santiago. And that was one of my very first exposure in maybe 2012 to the Camino de Santiago. And one of the characters there is not practicing any faith, right? But arrives to find faith. And if you were to judge that person throughout the entirety of the journey, when they're, having a party or doing this, that, or the other, you might be very quick to judge them. And I think that's one of the things that we all have to realize when we're, it's day to day, of course, but especially when you've invested so much into your own journey, it becomes easy, I think, for us to be critical of others. And I see it there's a lot of Camino Facebook groups, right? People say, oh, I want to walk the Camino, but I can't carry a backpack. Right? And which is fair. There are a lot of people who maybe the physicality of it, it just is too much because of their health, because of the way they the way that they want to do the Camino, because of a physical disability. But I've seen pilgrims who are 99 years old, out there walking. Wow. And to me, that's much more like what they're doing feels more connected than what I'm doing, with my backpack and just sort of walking with my water bottle and so on. So I think you have to be careful not to put too much of your own definition on others.
For sure. Yeah.
Sorry that we cut you off. What was finish your thought on the New Mexico Santa Fe to Chimayo?
Oh, that was it. No, I think you covered it perfectly, Kevin. Is the fact that you never know what's going on in somebody else's head, and it's a very personal journey, and it's something that you're like, you might see somebody like on their knees and like, dude, come on, it's not that big of a deal. No, for that person, it is a big deal, and that's their expression of their faith, their love to God. And it's about walking along with them, but not judging, like you said, or not trying to impose the way you walk. And so that was a point. I think you covered it perfectly.
Yeah. And Gustavo, I mean, that's kind of the thing, right? Like, cause people have a different, experience, but also you might have different experiences along the way. So there are times where I want to walk by myself, I want to be in my own head, thinking about something that's important to me. And I try to make time every day when I'm walking. I dedicate part of my day each day to a different person or relationship in my life that I want to focus on. And so that's kind of a quiet, reflective time for me. Whether it's my wife, my son, my parents, my brother, that I really want to be focused on that. And so during that time, if somebody walks up to me, they may say, oh, Buen Camino, where are you going? Buen Camino. And you just sort of wave. And there's like this international I don't know. It's like this international recognition that it's alone time, right? And you kind of ebb and flow from alone and group, and it's one of the beauty, I think, of finding your tribe and finding people who are like minded or headed in your direction, if you will, along the Camino or along the pilgrimage. The Camino is clearly the most popular of all the pilgrimage routes, the Christian pilgrimage routes for walkers. There are many more pilgrims that go to Rome. There are buses and buses of faithful that visit St. Peter's Basilica. So it was really special for me as a walker to walk all through Italy and to arrive in St. Peter's. And if you're a walker, you've got your stamps along the way. And just like in Santiago de Compostela, you earn a piece of paper, right?
Your Compostela.
Yeah, the Compostela in Santiago and the Testimonium in Rome. But to go into St. Peter's and to go to the vicar's office and get your last stamp and to have them write your name down on the certificate or to hand you the certificate, and then I'm in Florida, so we're the world of Disney, right? Disney has these things called the Fast Pass, where you can just get onto a ride. You don't have to wait in the line. But the Pilgrim passport, at St. Peter's is the same. So you don't wait in the queue to visit the Basilica. You don't wait in the queue to go to the Scavi and visit, the tomb of St. Peter. And so I was able to go and pray at the tomb with the prayers of pilgrims that I had carried, and just really powerful moment for me. Probably one of the most powerful is the lightest thing I ever carried were the prayers of others, and the heaviest thing I ever carried, literally the heaviest thing in my backpack, were those prayers, because people. I've only on 2 occasions have I asked or volunteered to carry the prayers for others, just because I knew where I was going and I knew it might be impactful to other people. But what they wrote, I just have so much respect for the men and women of the cloth that take on the prayers of others, because these things are so personal and so powerful and so impactful. I just felt insignificant in their face, and to be able to light candles on their behalf was just, it meant more to me than maybe my own journey, that I was able to do something for someone.
That's amazing. That's a great story. You were not kidding when you said you're a good storyteller at heart.
I don't know if I'm a good storyteller at heart. I love stories. So that's one of the reasons I started the podcast, right? Because I like talking to people. I like listening to their stories. And I'm in the process of writing a book called The Pilgrim's Table, which is a fictional book. I want to finish it. It's probably going to take me all year, so maybe it'll be out next year. But it sort of incorporates the stories along the way of the people that I've come in contact with, and the people that I've spoken to. And so the characters in the book, there are 5 pilgrims that basically are all coming different routes, and they end up in one albergue, one man's home, having dinner together, 5 strangers. And when you're with people and you've been on similar journeys, you just get to talking like we're doing, and those stories just come out. And so I'm really excited to share some of those and my own experiences and reflections through that storytelling. So fingers crossed, guys.
Well,
we're
maybe
be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, and maybe that book turns into the much needed movie that we need for
I wouldn't go that
reboot
far.
for the Camino. Come on,
we'll talk about it.
It's been a good 10, 11 years.
Okay, I got Gustavo in. He's in. He's my hype man.
At least do he's a graphic designer, so he can at least do the.
Yeah, dude.
You could do the poster art. Yeah,
I can do everything.
He's pretty good looking guy too. Maybe we can talk him into it, Walter. He could be the. Yeah, see.
I mean,
I can act like I'm walking.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing people can see the podcast video, because
we blur my face out, by the way, in post. Don't worry about it.
I already broke my camera.
So, but the other book that you have, Sacred Steps, a Pilgrimage Journal. That one's going to be available on Easter of 2023?
It's going to be available by Easter 2023. So it's in the final edit right now. And so we're hoping to get it out and get it published next spring. So Sacred Steps, a Pilgrimage Journal, that's my first book. And it's really this, it starts where I started, at this intersection of history and faith, right? And it kind of tells the story of these pilgrimage routes, not only through the experiences I've had, but also their historical significance, other pilgrims throughout time who have made those journeys, you know, from Catherine of Aragon to Santiago de Compostela, but also looks at more than just the Camino. There are about 1,000,000,001 Camino books out there. So that's all we need is one more Camino book, is somebody saying, I walked the Camino and here's what it meant to me.
It was different for that person.
It was, and that's their story, right? And that's what's beautiful. But for me, I wanted to give people an opportunity to see maybe beyond just the Camino. So I talk about my Camino experience, but I also talk about my walks in the UK, walking through California, walking in Italy, because it's different everywhere you go, right? That walk along St. Cuthbert's Way to Lindisfarne, Holy Island, I haven't done anything like that in my whole life. And the experience of walking across as the tides recede and the island kind of opens up, right? Literally, like it feels biblical, you know, like the waters part, right? And there's these path of these old oak timbers that just kind of mark the way, like this is the high line of the water, and that's the path that you take to Lindisfarne Priory. And you know, you have to go at low tide, and so that's in the morning in England. For me, low tide, the walking time was like 7:05, so I had to get to the edge of the water by about 7:05, and it's about a 90-minute walk across to the island. And you know, 7:05, right? It's like sunrise. And you know, we had this huge storm the night before. It was like 37 degrees and rain and wind, and England and Scotland were giving it to me all they had, right? And I was calling my wife the night before, and I was like, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to go. Like this is pretty intense. But it cleared out all the skies. So you had these like perfect, beautiful skies. You're walking to the east. So you're walking right to the rising sun with these poles. And in the background, you know, it's the middle of the sea. So it's nature, right? You've got birds swooping up ahead. There's sea lions barking out on the North Sea. And you know that, and I had researched because I didn't know, but you know that for 1,500 years, people have walked across this sea to get to the Abbey, and what it meant to those who were seeking refuge while so many were being persecuted for their faith. And, you know, it's just to be in those places, to put your feet where others had before you, that really meant an awful lot to me. That was really an incredible experience. And I reflect on it in Sacred Steps. And I think it's, to me, people are like, what walk would you do again? I would do the walk St. Cuthbert's Way to Lindisfarne again any day I could, but I'm not sure I'll ever be able to do it again. I'm not sure it'll ever be that moment. And I'm not sure I ever want to try it to make it that moment, right? Because
want to spoil it because it was so special.
Yeah, it's like, well, I mean, like if you have a favorite restaurant when you're growing up, right, or a favorite movie, and then you watch it again when you're an adult, and you're like, this is different.
It's not the same. Yeah.
It's not the same. You know, there's a little bit of a special moment that I had in that walk, and I think it'll always be incredibly special because it might be the one time I do it.
There's so many layers to pilgrimages. You know, from our conversation just now, it's you can go about it any which way you want and for any reason or with whatever outcome, you know, whatever goal you have. So it's just so varied and it's so beautiful. the getting lost in history that did happen to me, both in San Juan Capistrano and I didn't do a pilgrimage, we visited, but both in San Juan Capistrano and in Chimayo, it's just like time stopped, and it's incredible to see that. First of all, the structures are still there, so I'm grateful for people that invest their time and volunteer in upkeeping structures like that, so future generations can enjoy them. But it does get you in a different headspace. You walk into like little dark rooms in San Juan Capistrano, and you're like, they prayed here, and they build these walls. It's like you walk in the garden, and like monks walk through those gardens, and now like people with cameras are walking through it, just taking pictures, selfies.
Yeah.
So it does like give you a different perspective, on how much we've gone through, and how privileged we are in a lot of different aspects. Compared to people that were, like you said, being persecuted, or like didn't know if they're going to have rain the next day for the crops, or it's just a different set of circumstances that I think also help the walker, the pilgrim, get into that headspace to say this. They had their issues, but they also had their priorities in check.
Yeah, and San Juan Capistrano is actually where I met the two little girls out by the fountain, there by the bells. But, just south of there, one mission prior is San Luis Rey. And now that is it's run by the Franciscans. And so you can go there and stay with the Franciscans and have a night or a week of Franciscan life. And, in and of itself, it's a great retreat space, mentally, spiritually. And so I stayed with the Franciscans one night, and we had great stories, and then it was quiet, right? Like, and
it's time for the Great Silence. I think they observed the Great Silence as well.
Yeah. And, that was really a wonderful experience for me as well, to have walked all day, been exhausted, and to arrive, to get there, you kind of go, it seems like endlessly uphill. I never realized the topography of California. But it's like two big mountains and a little bit of a bowl in the middle. And you're like, okay, so everything's uphill. Got it. But I think that's a great example. And then on the Camino, there are two really incredible American 501c3s, one from Texas and one from New Jersey, Warriors on the Way and Veterans on the Camino. And they raise funds to take servicemen and women on the Camino de Santiago to help combat PTSD.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
The stories we had the gentleman from both organizations on different episodes of the Sacred Steps podcast. And, ours, I'm a couple of years older than you guys, but ours is a generation, that has been hit so hard by veteran suicide, because we've asked so much of so few. And these men and women, when they leave the military in particular, they often feel they've lost a sense of brotherhood and connectivity to service. And the Warriors on the Way organization, or Veterans on the Camino, all of a sudden you're back with a unit, right? You've got, and they are very military about it. They've got their ruck, not a backpack. They've got their ruck. They got their boots, but the organizations provide everything. They provide the backpack. They provide the boots. They provide the transportation. They provide dinner, accommodations, flights, everything to get men and women to be able to be back in these spaces where they can laugh and share and cry and fall apart and be rebuilt all over again in a safe space where others are walking towards Santiago de Compostela. And whether you're Catholic, Protestant, Christian, or practicing some other faith, or none at all, there's a place for you on the Camino, and there's a place for you within pilgrimage.
Beautiful.
That is such a that's such a good mission. Kevin, where can people find you in everything that you do?
Yeah, I can't imagine they would want to, but so maybe you guys can link it in the show notes. But I do have a podcast. We're getting ready to hit season 3 on the podcast, and on the show, I talk to Camino pilgrims and authors who are sharing their stories.
Okay.
So on whatever podcast app you're streaming on today, it's the Sacred Steps podcast. Okay. You can find me at sacredstepsbook.com, sacredstepspodcast.com, and very soon, thepilgrimstable.com. So I appreciate you guys talking a little bit about pilgrimage and different ways that we practice faith and the way that it moves us in our day-to-day lives, both in our familiar settings and for those that we embrace that are a little less familiar, like pilgrimage.
Nice. I love it. You motivated me to dust off my hiking boots and hit the trail.
Yes, we're going. All right. So look for Walter and I at walterandkevinwalk.com.
I know. Yeah. Maybe 2024, because my youngest is still pretty young that I don't want to leave my wife alone for a period of time. So,
well, my 50th birthday is next spring, and my son, who's going to be 14, wants to walk the Camino with me. And that's like what a better gift to give one another, right?
Yeah.
And I think the thing that I want to do while we're making that walk is the thing that my wife told me at the very beginning. She gave me a journal, and she said, write it all down. You know, whatever you feel, whatever you experience. And I can't imagine a better gift to give myself and maybe one day share with my son than writing down what it was like to walk with your son or your children, or to be in a place that means so much to you. But we can do that every day at home, right? We can do that every single day at home. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Well, Kevin, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to come talk to us. And we look forward to your upcoming walks and the podcast and the books. We'll keep an eye out, and we'll put all the links in the description of this episode. And for everybody else, go to direct.me/Barbatus for more information on the podcast. And we'll see you next week.
Gustavo, Walter, be well, stay safe, and buen camino, my friends.
Buen camino.
God bless. Buen camino.
God bless.